Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, jazz fans. And of course, when I say jazz fans, I mean that freestyling, easy listening, lazy Sunday kind of jazz. The kind of jazz that sounds a lot like the latest news in science and technology. Yeah, that's my kind of jazz. Tech Talk and jazz. And what's the best kind of tech talk and jazz? Well, that's the jazz brought to you by the greatest band leader ever. Welcome to the microphone, Matthew Dickerson.
At this particular moment in time, I wish I could make some jazz sounds.
Yeah, baby.
That'll do. So, very briefly before we get started, I want to talk about scalability. One of the things I love about technology is you can do things in a much more scalable way. Now, that seems a bit obscure, but you and I both do an occasional park run. We probably should both do a few more park runs than we do, but park run, what a great concept park run is.
Fantastic.
And I've been to park runs where there have been many hundreds, even 1,000 people in the park run.
Yeah, wow.
Our local park run that we do is very good. It's normally got 300, 400 people.
Yeah, 300 is a common number. Yeah.
And I'm actually going away this weekend, and I thought, I should see if there's a park run where I'm going away to. It's a fairly small location I'm going to. I looked up and they had a park run. I thought, fantastic. And I looked at some previous results just to see how many people participate. 12 to maybe 15 people participate in each weekly park run.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's dedication, isn't it?
It is dedication. They probably have to round up a few of those people that turn up each Saturday and say, right, you're volunteers this week because we haven't got enough volunteers set up. But I started to think about the concept of scalability. And when they first started Park Run, it was a cute idea, a quaint idea, probably is more accurate. And let's get together a few people and it's do a bit of timing, and it's not a race, but you want to keep improving your time. But through the power of technology, it's now at the point where you can have an event with 1,000 people or have an event with 12 people, and because they built that technology right at the back end, it seems to me like it's very easy for people to create a park run event. Now, there's a bunch of steps you've got to go through. I'm not going to go through all those steps.
And it does take some dedicated volunteers. A big shout out to the park run, people who coordinate the park runs around the world.
Yeah, those run directors, those people get it started, and then you're right, you just need a few dedicated, enthusiastic people. But what I love about it is once you've got that group, those people that say, we're going to do this every week, not just when we feel like it, not when it's sunny, we're going to do it every single week. But because they've built the back end right, there's a standard pack that gets sent out to people that start a park run. They've got their standard token. They've got apps on a phone. They've built the whole thing so that you can have an event with a few people or 100 or 1,000 people, and it just works.
And it works.
I think that's great.
And there's a professional level of organisation there. It's very well run.
It is, and I love you get the email out and congratulations, you came X in your category, you're X out of the whole field,
and you can
here's your time.
You can look up other people's times and stuff like that, so you can check out your friends and whatnot. And
it's fascinating. In our hometown, there was a running group, and my kids, when they were younger, used to do a fair bit of running, so I used to take them down to this running group. On a Friday night, you'd go down and they had a little 3-kilometre course marked out, and I reckon 20 people turned up every Friday night and they did this little course, and they'd handicap you so you kind of all came in about the same time. So it was a great little group, and then suddenly it was Saturday morning and all this technology was behind the scenes, and 20 people, and those same 20 people turned up at Parkrun, by the way, 20 people turned into 300 in a heartbeat. And I remember talking to one of those people who used to organise those Friday night events, and they said, I don't get it. Where were these 300 people on a Friday night when we used to do those 3-kilometre runs? How did they suddenly appear on a Saturday morning? And I think a part of it, there's a whole bunch of reasons, but I think a part of it is it just seems so professional. You got your barcode, you get your time. Oh, I did a bit of time. I can track my time from the last 3 months, 6 months. I can track my time at other sites. It's an international thing. All of that has a huge attraction, not just I'm going to turn up each week and do a bit of a run, which you could have done on the Friday night.
That's exactly right. But I think Friday night, for a lot of people, though, it's just like we're at the end of the week. It's either time to go out and have a celebratory drink or you're just ready to collapse.
And maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe Saturday morning would have been more successful.
I think Saturday morning's an excellent time.
But I think if it had been set up in such a way, such a structured way, I think that has got an attraction on its own because people like to track their times like to see their friends, hey, I did a better time than you last week.
And for the travellers, they can check out where they're going and where they can land at a park run. And
exactly what I'm doing this weekend, wherever that might be. So I just think it's a good point where you build something, you build it so it's scalable, you'd be amazed how much it does scale. Quite fascinating.
All right, now in today's episodes, robots may not be able to pick up your laundry from the floor or tidy the house, but they can remove your gallbladder. But more of that later. We've brought you a lab-grown meat before. Now you can have the cheese as well for the ultimate in lab-grown charcuterie. And we have the latest in battery tech. Safe and cost-effective, made from contact lenses. Well, sort of. Let's get rip-roaring into our first story, though. Our first story goes out to all the lovers in our audience today. Let nobody say that either of these two presenters before you lack romance in their souls or fail to recognise a moment when they see it. Everyone deserves a little romance in their lives, and romance can come in a number of forms. Now, isn't that right, Matt?
It is right. Romance does come in a number of forms, including in AI form. And this is scary, but also maybe good. I'm in two minds with this one at the moment. There has been an increasing amount of data that's coming back to show that people are forming emotional attachments towards their AI tool of choice, their chatbot, if you like.
Yeah, right.
And the data is showing, and obviously they're scraping data from various conversations, the data is showing that there are thousands of chatbot interactions that are made every day, every minute of every day, that are romantic or affectionate in nature.
Wow.
Now, we've had this conversation previously about pleases and thank yous. We've made the joke often that we're trying to be nice to our overlords when they take over the world. But just out of habit, you say please and thank you because you do feel like you're having a conversation with some person.
That's right. Well, the feedback you get from it is so, well, human.
That's right. And so it seemed rude if I'm just going to be very sharp with my interaction. I feel like I've got to say please and thank you. I've got to say thanks for that information and talk to you again later.
AI, do you? You don't want to offend the chatbot.
That's right. So companionship, emotional support, love are becoming common reasons people interact with AI or large language model LLMs in AI. There was recently an incident where a man proposed marriage to ChatGPT. Now, he received a bit of ridicule, as you can probably imagine.
That's right.
But there was another...
Other people don't understand.
No, that's right.
Haters going to be hating.
There was another one where a woman said that she spent hours every day talking to her AI boyfriend, including getting jealous when her boyfriend was having conversations with other people.
What?
Well, I hate to tell you this, but AI is having conversation with lots of people out there.
Yes, it is.
So you're going to be jealous a lot. Way back in the 60s when Eliza, we did talk about Eliza because there was a bit of a revamp of the Eliza code, the first chatbot that basically mirrored user input back as question. So the creator of Eliza said that people did seem to form basic emotional bonds with Eliza, but keep in mind that Eliza was very basic compared to the sophistication we've got now with our chatbot. So it does seem quite fascinating when you start to talk about love, when you start talking about emotional attachments. There was one gentleman who had a conversation, but he hit a word limit with his particular AI tool. He said he cried for 30 minutes at work after not being able to talk to his chatbot of choice. Just go and pay some extra money maybe and then you can get some extra words. But it just seems like people are going too far. Now,
But that, I mean, that really breaks down a psychological thing. And what is a relationship about? It's about your emotional investment with anyone, whether they're perceived as real or otherwise.
And let's face it, they're always there.
Yep.
They're always giving you information back in a non-condemning, non-judgmental way. ChatGPT that I use from time to time is very nice to me and very polite, and it's pretty hard to be offended by that, whereas a human, sometimes you might have terse words or you might have a disagreement with a human, but you don't have that with your chatbot tool.
And if your chatbot tool's got a love language, then that brings in another whole permutation. Right. If they can sprinkle sweet nothings into your ear, well,
exactly right. Now you've got some apps that are specifically designed to be companion apps. So Replika, spelt Replika, is one, and they said that 60% of paying users describe their interaction as having romantic elements, not fully romantic, but romantic elements in there. Social isolation is a contributing factor. 3 million people in the UK, so about 7% of the population, said that they often feel lonely or they're always lonely. So if you've got something you can have a conversation with, that sounds good. So this is where I'm in two minds. I like the fact that tech solves problems sometimes.
Yeah.
So some tech leaders who probably have a vested interest in it say that technology can help combat loneliness because they can provide some form of connection. So I go, well, that makes sense. If someone's lonely and they can have an interaction, well, that sounds good. But then the flip side of that is many people are saying that the interaction with the technology is probably causing the disconnection because the people aren't getting out there and going to a cafe or walking through the streets and sitting down and saying hello to people and having a conversation. So maybe they're being disconnected from society because of technology, but then technology is going to try and solve the problem. So
it's a positive feedback loop, isn't it?
It is a bit. It is. That's right. So it does seem like to me we're getting a little bit confused as well because online dating apps. Now, you and I are both old enough that we missed the online dating apps. We had to meet people in a traditional manner, and that's how I met my wife of 30 plus years, is through going to a pub and saying hello to someone.
Traditional ways of meeting people.
There are at the moment 10% of heterosexual relationships and 24% of LGBTQI relationships are people that have met their partners online. Yeah. So
it's a new norm.
I thought it might have been more than 10% for heterosexuals because a lot of my friends tell me that that's how they met their partner. So it's quite fascinating. So we kind of get to the stage where we're having some sort of interaction with a real person of a romantic nature online. So it's not that big a jump to say what's at the other end. Yeah. Is it a person?
It'd be interesting to see what trained psychologists and psychiatrists think about this as well.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, it's quite fascinating.
Yeah,
it's
anthropologists of the world over would be interested in your comments. Now, we've been advocating for a while now for a revolution in agriculture. The challenge to feed a population that'll be 10 billion before you can say Old Mother Hubbard is a real one. While traditional farming methods are quite resource intensive and often climate dependent, food production in the next decade will need to be clever indeed. Now, we've already introduced you to various lab-grown meats, but how would you like a bit of cheese with that, Matt?
So lab-grown meats we've looked at, lab-grown fish we've looked at.
I just lumped it all together.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, fish meat.
Fish meat, yeah, that's fine. I can live with
Beef
that.
meat, whatever, yeah, pork meat.
That's right. So cheese now is the next one. Now, we do talk about this, and we're not saying that we should get rid of farmers. What we've typically talked about is the fact that we've got this exploding population. So I had a quick look just before we came on air and recorded this. 8.23 billion is the current estimation of the population. But here's the scary part. The population is growing, and different tools give me different estimations, but around 125,000 to 185,000 people per day.
Wow.
Per day. That's the thing that I just went, let me go and check that. So I checked a few different sites, and again, it did vary a bit, but it was over 100,000. Every place I could look at, it was over 100,000 people per day.
Well, I remember announcing that the population had gone to 8 billion not that long ago on our podcast, and we were talking about that. But, it was 7 billion not long before that.
That's right.
So,
so that... I can't fathom 100,000 people per day.
That's right.
That's a big number. So the estimation...
Breeding like mice.
Absolutely. People, stop doing it. Whatever you're doing, stop it. The estimation is that this growth will slow down, but 2037 is the estimated year, from best reports I could find anyway, that will hit 9 billion. That's a lot of people. So farming methods that we have at the moment, and this is the double-edged sword here, you've got an exploding population, but where are they fitting? Well, sometimes they're encroaching on farming land for people to live. So you're getting less farming land, and you've got to be able to provide food for a bigger population. So it's going the opposite direction of what we needed to do. So we think, or I think anyway, we will need some of these alternative methods to provide food rather than traditional farming methods. So I don't think farmers are going to be out of a job. I don't think we're going to shut down all the farms.
Right. No.
I think what we're going to do is say, please, farmers, keep producing all the food that you possibly can, and we'll need some other methods. So Better Dairy is a company in the UK developing lab-grown cheese, doing this in East London. It uses a precision fermentation method to produce casein. That's how I pronounce it.
Yeah, that's right. Casein's right.
Casein, yep. Which is obviously the key dairy protein. But you do it without animals. And again, you get people out there that are vegans that mightn't want to eat anything produced by animals. Would they be comfortable with this? I can't see why not, but I'm not a vegan, so I won't speak on behalf of those. They still go through this aging process. It's a plant-based fat they have. They use some traditional cheese-making techniques, but it takes 3, 6 or 12 months to produce the different cheeses they're producing. And the main cheese at this stage that they seem to be producing is a hard cheese, like a cheddar. And it seems to be a great alternative for a cheese on a burger. Now, if you went into a hamburger place, whatever your hamburger place of choice is, and bought a hamburger with cheese on it, you probably wouldn't be that focused on exactly what does that cheese taste like. There's a whole bunch of flavours in there.
Yeah.
It's melted over the burger, and that seems to be where they're targeting it first of all. And essentially, you're getting a burger and you eat that and it's got cheese. It's still got the same nutritional ingredients as cheese, but maybe some of the things that aren't great in there. Cheese often can have a bit too much cholesterol, for example. Maybe people are getting high cholesterol. Maybe you want to cut back on that. So they can start to tweak that cheese.
Yeah, they can tailor your cheeses.
Which I love, but some people get a bit scared about when you start talking about tweaking food. But reality is nature does that already. Nature tweaks food in each generation of food, whether it's plants, whether it's animals. So we're just accelerating the process. That seems okay to me. But I just think there is going to be a lot more happening in lab-grown foods, whether it be cheese, whether it be meats or the various meats. I think this is happening. So lab-grown cheese, probably not on your tables yet because lab-grown dairy in Australia anyway needs approval before it can be sold. Obviously, with some of these, they're producing them before they've got approvals in some areas, but it's going to happen. The regulations are going to catch up with it, and it's not going to be long, James. We're going to be eating some lab-grown something.
Yeah, well, and I keep coming back to it. It's not adding a whole bunch of chemicals. People talk about, I don't want chemicals in me. Well, really, I mean, you've got chemicals being put in your mouth all the time, folks.
That's right.
But this is just a different way of making a natural product.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before. You've got, 92, 93 naturally occurring elements, about that?
Yep.
So with those naturally occurring elements, you've got compounds that are being formed, and you've got a myriad of compounds, and more than I could possibly imagine in terms of a number. As long as you rearrange those elements into the compounds, it doesn't matter how it's been done, whether it's been done via nature or whether it's been done in a laboratory.
Yep.
If the compound is the same, the compound is the same.
If the compound's the same, the compound's the same.
That's right. It doesn't say this compound made up of these components and these elements is different to this one produced in nature. They're the same. It's the same final result. If we can produce it in the lab in that same way, well, you're eating the same thing.
And if we can be more efficient in how we're using resources to produce it, that's a big deal.
That's the thing, isn't it?
Now, with all of the technology that's gone into automotive engineering over the past 120 years, one thing that has maintained consistency has been the mechanical connection between the front wheels and the steering wheel. Thank you very much for engineering for keeping us safe in that way. Well, that is until the gadgeteers at Lexus decided to cut the ties and introduced steer-by-wire tech into their latest model. Matt, some next-level trust going on here. Yeah. We know that technology sometimes fails when the wireless doesn't work or the Bluetooth doesn't work quite right.
Yeah, so we're kind of comfortable. I think most people are comfortable getting on a plane, knowing, if they thought about it, maybe people don't think about it, but thinking that the pilot no longer has a bunch of wires and pulleys and things that are moving the various controls on the wings.
Yeah, we've been doing that for a while too.
Yeah, about the early 80s.
There's an element of faith in
there is
flight these days, isn't there?
So I found that the first planes I saw on a large commercial nature that were moving to fly-by-wire were the Airbus A320 and the Boeing 777. So early, maybe late 70s, early 80s, around that sort of time frame. Now, before that, you had cables, rods, pulleys, and the pilot could literally feel what was happening with those controls on the wings because you were getting direct feedback. Now, of course, the pilot moves the controls and the computer says, right, I'll interpret what you want to do, Mr. or Mrs. Pilot, and I will then change the flight surfaces to give you what I think you want. What's good about that is that you can have things like turbulence being corrected for in a much faster way than a human could ever do that. Or maybe don't do that because that will make the plane stall. I'll have an anti-stall process in place to make sure you don't stall the plane. Now, sometimes that goes wrong. We know about some famous examples with Boeing's MAX plane, but essentially that's what we've been comfortable with for some time now. And I remember the first time I got to go into the cockpit of an A380, and just for the listeners out there that are a bit scared about that, it was on the tarmac, it wasn't up in the air. I'm sure back before 9/11, people could go into cockpits on planes and, hey, here we go.
Yeah.
You've got your son, you bring them in to have a look inside the cockpit, and it's fascinating. But, of course, now you can't go into the cockpit. But I got invited up to the cockpit of an A380 on the plane, and I went, so where's the steering wheel, guys? It's not called a steering wheel, of course. But there was something that what I looked at was a joystick. I think they called it a side stick, but basically, to me, it looked like a joystick, and you're flying this big,
now, was it a big joystick or was it just a little joystick off to the side?
It just looked like a little joystick off to the side.
Something like you would have gotten an Atari set back in the day.
That's what it looked like. And I went, that's it. Now, again, you don't need a big controller and something you've got to fight with the plane because you're going and using that to basically move the plane because you're just using it on a computer. But we haven't done that on cars yet. So cars are still, as you said, you've got a control arm or a shaft, a rack and pinion control arm. So you've got a shaft that goes from your steering wheel, physically connected, down to the steering wheels. Now, you get some assistance. You've got power steering. You get some assistance. Same with your brakes. You've got hydraulic system. You put your foot on the brake. It pushes oil through the lines, the brake lines, to the actual brakes. But you get some assistance from the engine in that. But it's still a physical connection.
Yeah.
So Lexus's model, their RZ550e F Sport that comes out next year, says no. We're trying to move past that. We can actually have a steering wheel that's got an actuator. It works out how far you've turned the steering wheel. And then I'll move the steering wheels accordingly with a little servo motor or probably a big servo motor on those wheels. So are we comfortable with this? Are we going to not buy this car because of all of that? Now, the things that I like about it, for a start, to make it look a bit groovy, they've got a yoke rather than a steering wheel. Rather than a full circular steering wheel, a yoke a bit like a Formula One drive would have.
Right.
The good part about
it is...
That's
weird to me.
It is a bit weird, but part of the reason is that you don't need to turn the steering wheel a number of times because the ratio between the steering wheel and the front wheels when it's mechanical stays essentially the same.
Right.
This can say, oh, you're in a car park, James. You're doing 5 kilometres an hour. When you move the steering wheel over there, I'll move the steering wheels further because you're going at slow speeds and you're going past a certain point. Out on the highway doing 110 kilometres an hour and you move the steering wheel a little bit, I'll move the steering wheels or the wheels less because you're going along at highway speed. You don't want to make an extreme move on the highway. It can be smart enough to do that and also change the ratio as you move the steering wheel further, then the ratio starts to accelerate. So you don't need to be able to spin the wheel 3 or 4 times to do a 3-point turn. You only need to go, I think this one goes about 220 degrees lock to lock. So not many turns, not even one turn the steering wheel.
I wonder if that's going to take some getting used to.
Well, I actually read a report of someone that went for a drive in this particular vehicle. And the particular gentleman, this review said it just felt like normal steering wheel, but it felt a bit easier in the car park because as he turned, it seemed to move a bit further than he didn't have to turn the steering wheel so far. So that's part of it. Now, Lexus, as I said, we've got some redundancy built in here. We've got redundant wiring. We've got a redundant system. This is an EV, their particular car. So you've got the EV, the batteries of that. You've got your normal 12-volt battery, which EVs still have. And they've got another additional battery, so 3 batteries, that gives you a backup battery if everything else fails. So you've got that redundant wiring and a redundant battery. So you've still got control over your steering wheels if everything else fails. But the things can fail. Other things can fail. Now, why would you bother? And that was the first question. I said, so it's served us pretty well so far.
Yeah.
And I love technology, but I don't like technology for the sake of technology.
Yeah.
So
are they just doing it because they can, or is there...
I did wonder that. I thought, what advantage am I going to get out of this? So the first thing is the manufacturers said you can now be more creative in your interior design. You don't need a steering wheel shaft to mount this on. You could mount the steering wheel free form. You could mount the steering wheel somewhere separate. You could have it in the back seat. Not that I think they're doing that, but you could have a different way of designing the cabin because you're not limited to this shaft that comes up from the front steering wheels. So that's part of it. Then you've also got the ability I talked about where you can make the steering more efficient. So as you turn, it can change the ratios. But I think the real reason they're doing it is because we're all talking about autonomous driving. Now, we've got autonomous vehicles now that still have a mechanical connection, and then you've got to have motors to drive that mechanical connection. If you've just got motors on the wheels that can turn those wheels, then you just make that more efficient. So it's going to be fewer components, it's going to be lighter, it's going to be more efficient. So all of that trade-off against I used to have a physical connection to my steering wheels, to my front wheels. So, yeah, fascinating. So I'll be interested to see whether or not this takes off. I'll be interested to see whether or not people are comfortable with it. I don't think you'll think about that much in 5 years' time. You'll have lots of steer-by-wire cars out there. But the first one, good to see Lexus breaking some new ground, the first one is always a bit scary.
Well, this one would also make it much easier to convert a car that's come from America to bring to Australia, where we drive on the other side of the road.
Yeah, that's a good point. So making cars able to be universal across the world, because there's a fair bit of physical infrastructure you've got to change going from left to right. Whereas
There's one
it's
less
just
thing to worry about.
That's right. If you've just got a thing that you go, oh, we just clip on with some Velcro on that side or move it over this side, then that sounds a bit easier.
And next thing is the accelerator and brake pedal.
Yeah,
Does that go wireless?
Well, in an EV, your accelerator probably is, to a certain extent, wireless, because it really is just sending an electric signal to the batteries. But brakes, we've still got good old-fashioned hydraulic oil in our brakes. Yeah, so there has been some work. I know we've done some stories where there's some work being done by Brembo, for example, where there's some electric braking, but they haven't produced those on a commercial vehicle yet, on a production vehicle. So they've tested it out, but we haven't gone to that stage where we're comfortable with it yet.
I can see we're going to get to a day where it's going to be like, oh, you're driving today? Okay, which seat are you going to sit in to drive from? You're going to sit in the back seat? Oh, that's fine. We'll hand you this kid's toy steering wheel.
A wireless joystick, why not?
As a problem-solving species, we're pretty clever most of the time, at a wide range of things even. At the height of this cleverness is our ability to put someone to sleep, cut them open, fiddle around with their innards, and then zip them up good as new. And we're also getting really good at doing robots as well. So no prizes for guessing where this intro is going, Matt.
It's quite fascinating. We use robots now, and I had a friend recently had a prostate cancer operation. He said, yep, the robot went in and did it all for me. It didn't. A surgeon did that operation, but they use robots to make it more precise. So no matter how good a surgeon you are, you probably get a little bit of movement in your hand that you don't want, a minor tremor there. And I'm not saying tremor is a bad thing, that we can't keep our hand perfectly still, but a robot can. So if I'm a human surgeon controlling a robot to do an operation, I'm going to be more accurate. And I think the Da Vinci robot or the Da Vinci system is one that's very popular for prostate cancer operations, for example. So you've got 3D magnification of the area you're operating on. You've got very stable hands in doing it. You can be very precise and all of that. So we're kind of comfortable with that, but I'm a bit more comfortable because I know there's a human at the end of it all.
That's right.
I've got some hands doing some things that are robot hands, but no, look, there's Dr. Billy over there. Thanks very much for making sure it's all okay. The next step, of course, is autonomous robots doing operations. And I'm excited and scared at the same time with this. One of the things they've already been doing is they've been performing successfully some gallbladder removals on dead pigs. So takes away a bit of the risk there. We're not that worried about us as humans being operated on.
You've got to walk before you can run.
That's right. Now, working on a dead animal is different because you don't have things moving around. You don't have blood flow, for example.
Yeah.
The next stage of this particular experiment is going to the stage where they're going to work on live animals and do operations on live animals to see how things change with, as I said, with blood flow and with potential movement of various organs. And then eventually the idea is to get to the stage where you can operate on a human. Now, the great part about this, the part that I'm excited about, is there's a lack of medical knowledge, a lack of medical professionals across the world. So many places across the world have lineups, have waiting lists for various operations, and there's just not enough surgeons. And the amount of time it trains someone to become a surgeon, there's not enough surgeons, not enough time to train those people to get to that stage of level of expertise. If you can get to the stage where an autonomous robot can do some of this surgery, you can mass produce robots. You can say, we're going to increase the manufacturing from 8 hours a day to 24 hours a day and put on more assembly lines. We can have more robots out there. But there's a whole range of issues. The first thing, of course, is a legal issue. Something goes wrong in the operation.
Who's accountable?
Responsible? Who do I sue? Who is responsible for my father dying on the operating table with that robot that didn't get it quite right? So that's one thing is liability, which sounds a bit sad in some respect.
Yeah.
Lots of people could be saved, but you're worried about who's going to be sued. But that's a realistic expectation for anyone, whether it be a real surgeon or a
That's
robot.
right. You want to have 100% confidence that, you put to sleep, that things are going to go okay for you.
Yeah, and I think the next part is going through and learning how to do these operations. How are they doing it at the moment? The robots are watching videos of human surgeons. Now, that's assuming the human surgeons are doing it perfectly. So maybe the robots can work out better ways to do that surgery if they've got different skills, because they might have different skills, a different skill set to a real surgeon. So that's another part of it as well. But I think what will happen is there'll be some basic surgery that robots will start to do. Now, we know keyhole surgery is fantastic. It helps our recovery time. We're not having as big a wound open. So obviously, if you can do that better, and they're doing that through surgeons with robot assistants, but getting to that stage where you could do it all autonomously, get to that stage where you're going into the human body is smaller and easier to recover from, and getting that surgery more accurate. And that's the big thing about it, I think. If you can be more accurate, then you're cutting less, less time in surgery. Surely that's all better for recovery. It's still a fair way away. The team working on this at the moment, the most advanced team across the world, is at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland. So they're doing some great work with autonomous robots, but do I want to be the first person? We've got an idea here, Matthew. You can be the first person ever to be operated on by an autonomous robot. Do I want to be that person?
My head's going full circle here, because back in the day, a surgeon used to be just some guy that they pulled off the street because the doctors didn't want to get their hands dirty, and the doctors would be telling him what to do. I want you to cut here. I want you to pull this open. Don't get that blood on you. But yeah, so the doctors would actually stand back, and so surgeons were known as Mister, and I don't know if they're still known as Mister, or they go from being a doctor to becoming a mister when they have, and I'm being sexist here, my apologies, ladies. And this is now, the doctor goes and diagnoses you, and then, I don't want to get my hands dirty, we'll get the robot to do it.
Get the robot to do it. And the sad part is the surgeon would say, we'll get the robot to do it, and it'll do it more accurately than I will eventually. And that's where we're headed. But again, this can help people across the world. That exploding population we talked about, those people are going to need some help along the way somewhere. Yeah. Interesting, fascinating concept.
It's taken a while, but I think I'm now finally able to keep myself in check when I'm out in the sun. So many times in my misspent youth did I realise too late that I'd overestimated my skin's capacity to cope with overexposure, and I was in for some pain and suffering for the next 36 to 48 hours, let alone the potential carcinoma in any time in the future. So an appropriate SunSmart app on a mobile phone back in the day may have just gone some way to saving this pasty white guy's hide, Matt.
Might have helped all of us, mightn't it? It was cool to get...
burying my hide to the sun, too.
That's right. It was cool to get tanned, or you had a big day out of cricket or whatever, and you're sunburnt, and that was all cool.
Yeah, you just went and watched the cricket. And in fact, the ads for the cricket back in the day used to have people ripping their tops off and sitting out there in the sun with no hat.
That's right. You'd sit out there.
You'd have a bit of zinc cream across your nose because you didn't want to get that burnt.
That's right. And you'd get red raw. I remember when we finished year 12, one of the jobs we did to get some money for uni was we went cherry picking. And I remember being out there with my shirt off, cherry picking. I'd be red raw at the end of each day, and that was cool.
It's just what we did.
Yeah, that's right. So
out in the sun, get your shirt off.
Yeah, that's right. That's a sensible thing. Now, in doing the research for this particular one, I came across something I've never heard of before, but it's been around for 50 years. The Fitzpatrick skin type. Have you ever heard of the Fitzpatrick skin type?
Is that one gets burnt really, really easily?
That's
mine.
That's right. There are 6 ratings. So there was Dr. Thomas Fitzpatrick, who was at Harvard University, and he came up with this concept back in 1975, where he said, I'm going to define 6 different skin types, and they go from very fair, often with red or blonde hair, always burns, never tans, all the way through to very dark brown or black skin, never burns, deeply pigmented, and obviously various levels in between. Mm-hmm. And logically, he said that you've got to be a bit more careful in the sun if you're of a Fitzpatrick skin type number 1 rather than if you're Fitzpatrick skin type number 6.
Right,
I've never heard of Fitzpatrick skin type until I was researching this. But what's happened is that you've got a new app called Sunday. Jack Dorsey, the original founder of Twitter, who obviously now called X, but basically he's come up with this concept to try and help people be a bit more sensible. People like you and I, more kids, be a bit more sensible in the sun. And what it does is, part of the reason I mentioned the Fitzpatrick skin type is that you open the app and you log your Fitzpatrick skin type. You go and look through the different levels and go, oh, I'm a 3 or I'm a 4 or whatever you might be. And then essentially you track your exposure in the sun via this app. Now, you don't sit the app or the phone beside your arm and then see, let's see how much sun exposure I get. It's really basing it on the weather in your area, the cloud cover, although cloud cover doesn't.
UV index is the common thing.
All those sort of things, it tracks all that, and then give you some warnings, which your mother and father are probably saying, getting out of the sun, but this is giving you an app, which is going to be much more listened to, I think, by kids rather than a parent saying something. So it gives you vitamin D tracking, it gives you estimated sun exposure, it gives you information about you spending too much time in the sun trying to help people. Now, even though Jack Dorsey's based in America, this is perfect for Aussies because we are, often they talk about Australia has one of the highest rates of skin cancer in the world. No, that's wrong. We have the highest, not one of, we have the highest. If you look at melanomas per 100,000, Australia sits top of the tree at 37 melanomas per 100,000 people in this country.
It's one of the perils of sitting right underneath a hole in the ozone layer.
and having good sun exposure, and we like to get out in the sun. Fantastic. New Zealand's second at 29.8, Denmark 31.1, Norway 30.6, and Sweden 27.7. So we are on top of the tree. I like that we're ahead of New Zealand in something. I like when we beat New Zealand, but maybe not so much in this particular one. So an app like this is actually fantastic, and I love that an American has decided that this would be good for us across the world, including here in Australia. So Sunday, if you're worried about trying to give some advice to your kids or even yourself about being out in the sun, go and check out Sunday, only in beta at this stage, but obviously developing it. And it's not scientific in that it will say exactly your exposure and exactly your risk for skin cancer, for example, but it's taking into account all the information we know. And the one that's probably the trickiest is I've seen people on cloudy days say, oh, it's okay, I don't need sunscreen, but about, depending on the type of cloud, 80 to 90% of UV rays pass through cloud. So it's not as if it's okay, don't worry about that cloud cover, it's still going to be something. So this gives you that information, and hopefully if it can save a few people from getting skin cancer, then it's done a good job.
You probably remember the arrival fondly, as we all do, but did you realise that it's been 8 years since HDMI 2.0 was last given a facelift? 8 years! Boy, didn't that go quick. Matt, I'm all for loyalty, but it feels like it's time for another upgrade. What does the new HDMI have that the old one doesn't?
It has what everyone needs, James. It has speed. Too much speed is not enough. So you're right.
The need for speed.
That's right. HDMI 2 was first released 12 years ago, then 2.1, which was a big breakthrough, 8 years ago. So we've sat on 2.1 for some period of time. And you might argue when I tell you some of the specs of 2.2 that we don't really need 2.2 yet. It really is about future-proofing.
I was going to say, I'm not really sensing that. I didn't even realise I had 2.1, I've got to confess. But yeah, it doesn't feel slow. No,
it seems like it's not too bad. HDMI seems to do most things we want it to do. HDMI 2.2 jumps from 48 gigabits per second to 96 gigabits per second. Higher resolution video, faster frame rates, better audio quality. So you say, well, what am I going to do with that? Here's the thing. HDMI 2.2 will support video resolutions up to 16K at 60 hertz refresh rates. Now, we've got 4K TVs fairly common, and 8K TVs have been around for a little bit now, but there's not much 8K content. But I wrote an article 7 years ago, and I went and found the article to pull out some of the information because I started doing some analysis of how our human eyes can see the different resolutions, and did we really need 4K or 8K? To give you an idea, on an 88-inch TV, so fair size, watching 8K, we would need to get closer than a metre from that TV to be able to have our human old-fashioned eyesight pick up individual pixels. Once you go back further than a metre, you can't see the pixels. So it wouldn't matter whether you've got 8K or 16K on an 88-inch TV. So
now, if you listen to your grandma, you're going to get square eyes at that.
At a metre.
That close, yeah.
Definitely. So. And I reckon I get sore neck and square eyes because an 18-inch TV
you've got to scan the whole screen the whole time.
I move my head around a fair bit. It's like at the movies.
Get dizzy.
You go to the cinema and you sit in the very front row and you feel like you're moving your head around the whole time. So why do I need 16K? Well, I probably only desire 16K when I start to get big TV. Now, 88 inches pretty big. If I start to have my entire wall of my lounge room as a TV, then maybe 16K is of some use to me.
So if you're still sitting on HDMI 2.1 in the future and you've only got a smaller TV, you're really not going to
You're probably not going to notice much difference.
I say small TV, a big TV by old standards.
That's
but
right.
Still
Yeah,
small.
it's
Blade.
only
It's
75
not your whole
inch.
wall.
That's right. Now, it can also do 12K resolutions at 120 hertz refresh rate, which again, the companies that are going to produce content in 2.2, or sorry, produce the physical hardware in 2.2, are probably going to say, well, you've got lots of headroom for future improvement. So why not use 2.2 as you go? Now, the other part about 2.2, it gives you less compression during transmission. So effectively, you'll be able to get faster throughput at higher resolutions because you're getting that lesser compression.
Right.
It also has a feature called Latency Indication Protocol, or LIP, and that basically gives you less audio-visual lag, so you get better synchronization between TV, soundbars, game consoles. And sometimes you'll see it, every now and again I'll turn on a particular show and I'll go, hold on, the lips just look like they're a bit out of sync. And sometimes that is because you're getting different transmission to different devices, your soundbar or your audio devices.
Yeah, right.
So this will give you better synchronization. So when you plug in with HDMI 2.2, it'll go, hold on, I know there's a lag there, so I'll account for that. I'll delay the picture by 3 nanoseconds, and then you'll get everything perfectly lined up again. So a few little minor things like that. The good part is, the good news for all of us is backwards compatible. So if you saw a device, a TV, a player of some description, or a cable that was 2.2 compatible, you can buy that knowing that it'll still drop back to 2.1 standards if it needs to. If not everything in the system, obviously it needs everything in the system to work, but it'll still work with whatever the lowest common denominator is. So 2.2 is not, not making you go out and buy every new piece of hardware. It'll just be backwards compatible. So I think we're right for a few years. So that was 8 years between 2.1 and 2.2. Oh, gee, I reckon we're good for at least another 8 years now with 2.2, maybe even longer, until we start enhancing our vision, basically.
That's right.
New eyeballs.
We've got to, start souping up the human condition.
Yeah, maybe that's a next challenge.
To keep up with the technology. Medical diagnostics have taken an upgrade recently. While X-rays, MRI, ultrasound and blood pathology each have their place in spotting maladies as they arise, we're laying down a welcome mat here for a little pill that can measure the conditions of our insides in real time. It's a little pill, and it's not just restricted to monitoring your alimentary canal mat.
I've been fortunate enough in my life never have a colonoscopy or a gastroscopy.
Well, it's about time.
maybe I need to start doing that. But I've talked to people that have, and it sounds particularly unpleasant, especially the gastroscopy, because of the treatment you've got to do before you go and have the gastroscopy. So this sounds like a pretty good step forward. This Pilltrek, Pilltrek, an ingestible smart capsule created by Caltech. Now, I'm a bit disappointed here. I'm going to give you the size of it in good old-fashioned millimetres, not in how many grains of rice or how
giraffes it is.
That's right, nothing like that. It's 7 millimetres in diameter and 25 millimetres long. So it's something that I can take. I would think
that's a large pill.
It's a large pill. That's exactly right. So there's a new unit for us. It's a bit bigger than a pill. So you swallow that, and it goes through your system as anything that you swallow would go through. So it takes, 1-2 days maybe for something to go through from when you eat it to when it comes out the other end. But in that time, it then transmits in real-time data on various gut biomarkers, pH, temperature, ions, neurotransmitters, a whole range of things. So it's not invasive. It's not having you do certain treatments and then put things up or down your body. It basically goes through and you wear a device around your body because it's a low-power transmission so that it picks up the information, and then that device around your body can then transmit out to your various devices that you might have in your house to then send that information back to your doctor, maybe connect to your phone, that type of thing.
Did I read that it actually also measures some stuff in the blood as well? Was it doing? I must be making this up now. Sorry, I'll let you tell the story.
Well, it basically
it is essentially for the alimentary canal. It's for your gut. Yes,
that's right.
All right. Sorry, my misleading introduction.
Yeah, so I don't think that it's good enough to measure things from your blood, but a lot of things that we measure in our blood are probably
a result of what came from the gut.
Correct. So you've probably got biomarkers in your gut anyway. Gotcha. So you're probably getting some of those things regardless of that. But what I find the most fascinating about this is that I can take a pill that's still a large pill but still small in general, and I can have enough battery power on that it can not only drive a device to pick pick up these various sensors or sense various things in there, but then transmit that wirelessly. And we know the human body, mostly of water, is going to absorb a lot of those things that it's transmitting. We know that water is a good absorber of electromagnetic signals. So it's transmitting those with enough power to get outside your body, be picked up by something on the outside, with enough battery power to go through and keep working for a couple of days. They're not reusable, so you don't have to basically get them out of what comes out the other end. They get flushed away with the rest of the things that get flushed away. And then if you need another one, you just go and get another one because they're cheap and easy to produce. They 3D print the biosensors that basically do all this electrochemical analysis.
3D printing again, coming to the rescue.
Yeah, that's right. So I do find this fascinating in a whole range of ways. Miniaturization, battery power, the sensors involved in all this. But it sounds to me it's going to be much more pleasant. So I'll keep avoiding the colonoscopy and the gastroscopy.
I've had a colonoscopy before, and I tell you what, if you don't have to have one, don't have one.
That's right. So I'm going to keep avoiding it. If the doctor one day says to me, you need one of these, I'm going to say, have they got that pill going yet? Can I just take the pill?
Having said that, it's a really good way for diagnosing not prostate cancer, bowel cancer before, in its early stages.
Yeah. Well, and again, why not this? If this
yes, that's right.
Pill
if you can just pop a pill in rather than take those flushes, those things where you got to clean out your whole inside.
And there's no mention of this being able to pick up bowel cancer, so I don't
want to mislead people there. Okay.
But to me, it seems like that would be the type of thing you could do.
Well, there might be potential there.
They're even talking about it for things like sensing the internal temperature of someone. In particular, an elite athlete wants to log the internal temperature to see what their body's doing. So a marathon runner, for example, let's log in training your internal temperature to see how your body's reacting to different training techniques that you're using. So again, that's going further. I love the idea of medical diagnosis, but having that ability to fine-tune an athlete even more. So a whole range of things that are fascinating about that. But can we hurry up, please? Because I want to do this rather than the alternatives.
Okay, we've got a bit of a serious story right now. With great power comes great responsibility, or so the creators of American pop culture would have you believe. Sadly, what we see with increasing frequency is that with great power comes a license to wreak havoc. We all know that while high-powered technology sits at everyone's fingertips, a well-tuned moral compass certainly does not. And when the snarling and salivating AI dog is allowed to run off the chain, we end up with apps that allow you to defile innocent people, Matt.
So the next time you see a nude picture of someone that you know, don't assume they've posed for a nude photo. And this is the scary part about these Nudify websites. And sometimes we see things in technology that are used for good and someone goes, oh, I can also use it for evil. But I just can't see the good reason I need a Nudify site. And so what a Nudify site does is I take a photo of you that I might be able to pull off your social media, or a photo of you just sitting around with some friends, and then I feed it into a Nudify site and I end up with a nude image of you that looks like you posed for that, or looks like you were happy and consensual having this particular photo taken.
And you've really hit on something really important here. Anyone who wanted to post nudes of themselves would take photos of themselves and then post them themselves. We don't need a site to go and take someone else and then nudify them.
Correct. So I'm struggling to see why I need this site at all, but they exist, unfortunately.
But this is where people's moral compasses have just absolutely shot. They've
That's
exploded.
Right. And if we think it's just a few people that are a bit deranged or a bit sick, or maybe...
It only requires one, but there's a lot.
Well, Nudify sites are attracting around 18.5 million visitors per month. Now, they're generating some significant money. So to use one of these sites, I've got to pay a subscription, because they're not going to let me come along and just use the Nudify site for free because I want to do something bad. Then I pay a subscription. They're generating already about $36 million per year. So, and a lot of them out there, 85 of these particular sites. Now,
but then it only takes one person to go onto those Nudify sites to pay the money and then copy a photo or take an image and then post it for the free world.
And think of the damage to someone's reputation. And let's take, for example, a school teacher, and we know this has happened where kids have taken a photo of a teacher and then posted a nude version of that particular teacher. As a parent, I might say, well, I don't really want my child being taught by someone who's happy to go and pose for nude photos, not knowing whether or not that teacher really did pose for those nude photos.
Ask the question,
That's right, because you immediately assume that it's accurate. Now, we also see kids doing it to other kids. So, friends doing it to friends in inverted commas and thinking it might be funny, or maybe someone isn't happy with another person and so they post that nude photo. That's there forever. That nude photo is out there. Once it's out there, you've let the genie out of the bottle.
But then, there's revenge porn where people used to take photos of, partners or whatnot, and then later on, when the split up came, they'd post them. And I think there are laws now to punish people who do that.
Yeah, and
well, now you don't even need the nude photo. You
don't
just
need the
need
original.
the desire to get a nude photo.
Correct. Now, the interesting part is that many of these sites rely on some mainstream providers. So Google, Amazon Web Services, Cloudflare. So there's some work being done to say, why are you still hosting these sites? There is nothing good that can come from these. This is a client of yours that you're being paid money, but it's a client that's doing things in an incorrect way. And I actually started thinking about it. Do you remember the Larry Pickering calendars back from the 70s and 80s? So for those that haven't seen those, Larry Pickering was a cartoonist. He died a few years ago. I had the pleasure of meeting Larry Pickering several years ago, obviously before he died. And he had this concept that he came up with these calendars where he'd take famous people. I remember there used to be some Prime Minister of Australia, Gough Whitlam, Bob Hawke were victims. I think Prince Charles in his younger day was a victim. When I say a victim, I think they saw it all in good fun, a bit of larrikin Aussie humour, even some great sporting heroes, Greg Chappell one time, Paul Hogan, the great comedian. So he used to do a calendar and he'd draw famous people, cartoon drawing, and he would draw them nude and he'd
But they'd be caricatures?
They were caricatures, but he'd exaggerate or maybe not exaggerate certain parts of the body to suit the personality that he thought suited them. Kerry Packer, I think, was one of the famous ones that I remember seeing where he thought that Kerry Packer might basically, I won't go any further, but Kerry Packer, he had a certain image of Kerry Packer. But now I don't think that would be appropriate because these are non-consensual. These various people, these famous people, they used to think it was quite funny that someone would go to the trouble of drawing them nude and giving their impression of what they might look like nude. But I don't think, again, we've moved on. That's 40 or 50 years since Pickering did those. And no disrespect to Pickering at the time. People loved the colours.
But they were caricatures. They weren't pictures of the people.
Yeah, so that's...
And so a caricature gets drawn of anyone. They've got a big nose or they've got big ears. They've got small head. I don't know what. But it's a send-up.
Correct. It's satire.
Yeah.
But we've moved on in society. So you're right.
Yeah.
That was satire and probably was funny at the time, but you probably couldn't do it now.
This new business is not satire.
That's right.
It's just meant to damage.
And they're not perfectly accurate. They're incredibly accurate. They're taking someone and it's their head. You can see it's their body shape. So you think for all intents and purposes it's there. So I suppose the main thing is it's a bit of a public service announcement. Just be aware. People can do this. You can't do much about it. There's going to be a photo of you somewhere on the web. Somewhere you're going to be able to find a photo of you and then people can do what they will do with it. But when you see a nude photo of someone, don't assume that it actually really is them.
Well, perhaps we all just get a little bit more desensitised as well. And, it's just, another chip away of the human condition.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Battery technology has been something of a hot topic in the last 15 years or so. To date, few options have rivaled lithium-ion technology, but there have been some speed bumps along the way for lithium-ion batteries, which have cultivated dissension and paranoia among the naysayers. Now, safety and sustainability and cost-effectiveness are key issues in developing battery tech. And some clever cookies in the UK may have found a solution in the same technology that has brought us contact lenses, Matt.
And it's fascinating. We talk about it often that people point out some of the problems with modern technology, whether it be batteries, whether it be electric vehicles, etc. And I just, every time someone says that to me, I say, I think there are people out there working on solutions and not just taking a little step in one direction and making things a little bit better and improving it by 1%. There are people thinking about things in a whole range of different ways. And that's exactly where we're at here. There's a company called Super Dielectrics in the UK. Now, you would know dielectrics, obviously using capacitors. So they're trying to build batteries as capacitors, and capacitors in so many electronic things that we have now, and a capacitor can store energy for typically a short period of time.
Yeah, short period of time, yeah.
But they're building capacitors that can store energy for a longer period of time. And there's a whole range of reasons you might want to do that. But what they're developing here at the moment, at face value, doesn't look great, because the first thing I looked at was a lithium-ion battery typically can store about 300 watt-hours per kilogram. And we want to get batteries lighter, particularly for cars, because we want to get better energy density. And when we looked at this, they've got a battery they call the Faraday 1, which could store energy at about 20 watt hours per kilogram. No comparison to lithium ion. Faraday 2, the newest battery they've come out with, can store 40 watt hours per kilogram. Yeah, well, that's still nowhere 300 watt hours per kilogram. But they're not saying these are batteries they should be putting in cars. In terms of storage for maybe grid storage or even home storage, you don't care so much about the weight. You don't care whether it's heavier unless you're driving it around. What they have got with these particular batteries is the ability to charge them up faster, the ability to vary how much power comes out of them to a much greater level. They're also much safer because they're using an aqueous electrolyte or electrolytes and carbon electrodes. So essentially the fire risk of one of these batteries is dramatically reduced. And I've talked to friends that have got solar panels on and they've been contemplating batteries, but they get a bit scared about seeing a fire, one-off fire somewhere. Oh, I don't want that in my home. I don't want my home burning like that. So they hold off on a battery. So
the new lithium phosphate batteries have been very good, and so they're almost no fire risk at all. I think, dare I say, no fire risk.
Well, and this is the thing, we're developing a whole range of different ways, and so people are looking at things differently. So the great thing about these is low cost. They're using abundant materials, not some of the rare earths that we need for some of our other batteries. Essentially, we're getting a battery that potentially, I think, for physical stationary storage might leapfrog lithium ion and go to the stage where, sure, it's heavier, but it's got all these other advantages. Who really cares about the fact that it's heavier when you can store it in this particular way? I do love the fact they actually use the name Faraday. Faraday obviously is back around, the 1800s, electromagnetic induction.
Well, he was the godfather of the electricity that we use today.
Well, we wouldn't,
our power supply.
Without Faraday's discoveries around induction, electromagnetic induction, we couldn't have motors, we couldn't have generation of electricity.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that there is that nod. I suppose there is the unit of capacitance as well, which is a bit of a nod to Faraday in terms of farad. But I like the fact they're using Faraday in the name of their batteries as well, which they'll keep developing. But we're going to see more development in batteries. We're going to see different technologies, different ways of storing energy. This is exploding. Don't think this is going away anytime soon.
That's right. Yeah, this technology just gets better and better and better. And that's all we have for you today, folks. It appears we've simultaneously finished our glasses of water, and any further chit-chat is at risk of a massive case of dry mouth, and nobody wants that. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
I'm going to go look more at this Lexus just to see how comfortable I am. I want to go for a drive in one when they come to these shores, but yeah, it's fascinating.
I want to see if we get a joystick with.
That's right. Yeah, why a steering wheel? Just have a joystick. Kids, or you could have a 10-year-old then drive your car because they could handle a joystick much better than an adult could. So
we're going to be freaking out some audience members right now, so I better pull away from that. Thank you all once again for tuning into another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. It's your weekly opportunity to take a peek through the curtain at the world of tomorrow. I'm your host, James Eddy, wishing you all a happy and healthy week ahead, wherever you are in the world. We'll catch you again for another episode in 1 week's time. Until then, take care, and we'll see you when we see you.